Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, and this is the Eve Universe Show, and we are discussing NFTs, non-fungible tokens. It is all of the rage, all of the discussion, and I have seen nothing but bad takes about it. I'm not saying that they are inherently good. I'm just saying that I would like to correct some misconceptions about the concept such that we can have maybe a more productive discussion going forward. This isn't just an EVE Online problem. The reason why I am doing this is because it has both come up in Final Fantasy XIV and EVE Online within the last month or so. And so I felt compelled to look at both of those announcements for what they are, examine and maybe clear up some misconceptions about what NFTs are, and maybe try to read into what they might mean, such that, again, so that way we can have a better conversation going forward. Because the problem is that I think that the complaints that people are making about NFTs are the kind of complaints that will make the developers think that you don't understand what they're going to do, and therefore they will not regard it as valid feedback because they are doing something different than what you think they are, right? If they think that you're talking about something different and they have an answer to that, then they're just going to not worry about it. But if we understand what closer to what they might be interested in doing, then we can provide better feedback or better, have a better discussion about it. So let's jump into it, shall we? NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Basically, the idea behind non-fungible tokens is that, well, first of all, the term fungibility, okay? Fungibility means that something can be traded for something else, right? They're all the same. For example, on EVE Online, anything that's sold on the market is fungible, right? If you buy an Abaddon, it is the same Abaddon as everybody else's Abaddon, as long as they're packaged, right? A packaged Abaddon is a packaged Abaddon is a packaged Abaddon. They're all the same. If I take one from you and then give you back a different one the next day, you probably won't even notice, let alone care. That's fungibility. Another example of fungibility is Bitcoin, right? Where Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency, each individual Bitcoin is the same as every other Bitcoin, right? So same with any other currency. So if I have 2 Bitcoin and I give it to you, and then I get 2 Bitcoin from everybody else, I effectively have exactly the same thing that I had before. So what they did was they began to tie things to these various cryptocurrencies in order to create authentic proof of ownership, quote unquote, in what is known as NFTs more broadly. So in order to understand that, we kind of need to understand cryptocurrencies, okay, and blockchains. So a blockchain just is a technology that uses a public ledger, right? Rather than one authoritative server that dictates what everything is and keeps track of it all. Everyone has, or not everyone, but there are lots of people that have their own copy of the ledger, and they all talk to one another. And basically, updates can be made to the ledger, and it's made to everybody's ledger. So that way, any time a change gets proposed, basically all of the ledgers have to kind of agree that it's acceptable, and then they update themselves, and we now have another transaction, right? So rather than authority being controlled by a single source, or the authority of the data, the integrity of the data being ensured by a single server, it's distributed and therefore harder to attack, right? That's the whole concept. Now, this can be a currency, like a cryptocurrency, but it doesn't have to be, all right? But there's a problem with this technology, which is that, well, there's 2 problems, but the first problem is with the blockchain itself. In order to update the block, or in order to get information or talk to the blockchain, you need to have what's known as a proof of work, right? In order to authenticate, in order to make a valid thing to make. So there is a central server, and this central server, or not central server, but the system distributes out effectively incredibly complicated math problems, and you crunch through them. And when you return it, that functions as a proof of work, right? It shows that you have done it. It's basically like crypto and cryptography and work kind of being pulled together in order to make it so that it's a valid authentication system. It's busy work, as Fansui said. The reason why that's important and why I'm bringing that up is it brings me to the first misconception that I want to clear up, which is cryptocurrencies require the massive amount of power, right? This is the biggest concern with cryptocurrencies, and more important, NFTs, which is the amount of power that is consumed in order to try to mine these Bitcoins and Ethereum and all this other stuff. However, that idea of these really complicated math problems as an authentication, as a proof of work, is only a system of authentication. And therefore, if you simply have a new system that works on a better way of doing it, then you all of a sudden do not have that problem, right? More importantly, if you don't have it as a currency, like straight up, then it becomes far easy. You know, a lot of that work is done in trying to mine Bitcoins. Or mine these things. So if you have a different way of generating who gets what, or how this stuff gets created, then all of a sudden you don't actually need that. So as Fansui said, going forward, future stuff will be more environmentally friendly in that sense. So that specific concern isn't really going to, isn't that concerning. However, the other half of it is, not only do you have to fix the proof of work, but you also have to, in order for it to be a currency, you have to create artificial scarcity. So rather than trying to debate this all myself, I want to, I'm going to look at what Hilmar and, actually, no, I have a video first that I want us to kind of walk through a little bit. Because they bring up the points that I want to bring up, and they kind of already wrote it and scripted it and all that stuff, and give them credit. And then we will read what what Hilmar and Square Enix's dude said. All right, first things first. I had this set up, but of course
or were basically cryptocurrencies themselves. Sometimes it was incredibly blatant, with the game requiring you to purchase things with Ethereum or some other cryptocurrency to be able to even play.
So this is talking about the old style.
It was less direct, through the use of something called crypto collectibles. So before we...
Okay, so what he's talking about is that the problem with NFT, with the use of cryptocurrencies and blockchain, the problem with the use of blockchain in gaming so far, this is the topic is how can blockchain technology be used as a game mechanic. The problem, he's talking about the way that they're used so far, which is that they effectively become tied to an excuse for cryptocurrencies. And that's basically what they came from. It's also worth noting that this video comes from 2018. So I have it sped up.
We talk about all the legitimately cool things games can do with blockchain, we've got to talk about this stuff. Crypto collectibles are simply in-game objects that use blockchain for three things: to ensure that the player, rather than the game company, owns the object, to guarantee the rarity of the object, and to assure the player that the object is unique and non-duplicatable.
So what he just talked about right there is actually the value of the cryptocurrency, of what blockchain can do. But we're going to get more information about that.
With that, let's talk about CryptoKitties, perhaps the premier crypto game right now. In it, you pay Ethereum to buy what is essentially a picture of a cat. Thank you, Zoe. These cats are crypto collectibles, owned solely by the player. Each is unique and has different traits that makes them more or less rare, like a fluffy tail or a silly mustache. The underlying thought being that the value of the rare or discontinued traits will go up over time. Now, at this point, you might be asking, what can I actually do with my newly minted one-of-a-kind crypto cat friend? Well, you've got two options. Sell it or breed it. If you choose to sell it, you put it up for auction for a price in Ethereum. And when it sells, CryptoKitties will take a cut. If you choose to breed it, though, you still pay CryptoKitties a small amount of Ethereum up front for the privilege. Because, and their FAQ actually...
Okay, so to summarize, basically, you can use a cryptocurrency to get one of these cats. They pre-generate a few of them and put them up for sale. Therein creates the scarcity, right? And then you can get two of them and breed them to kind of randomly mix together the details that make the cats what they are. Because like behind the scenes, there's a whole bunch of data that basically decides what the crypto kitty looks like. And that's what you're buying and selling and breeding is the code, is the details of what the cat looks like, its colors, how big its ears are, etc. And the CryptoKitties system knows how to take in that data and display to you your cat, right? So you don't actually own the cat. You only own the details behind that. But like I said, you can breed it and all that sort of stuff. So this is kind of what's been done with it before. So let's look at what it can be.
This. Literally all you can do with these CryptoKitties is sell them or create more. There really isn't a game here, but rather something very similar to a cryptocurrency where the participants pay for the privilege of having the company that created this pseudo-cryptocurrency control the only exchange for it. This really isn't how we should be using blockchain for games. Instead, creating things like real player ownership or true scarcity in an online game opens up a ton of super fun possibilities. One prospect that James thinks is incredibly exciting comes from the fact that blockchain serves as sort of a shared ledger, but instead of a ledger for money, it can serve as a ledger for events.
So this is his point, and this is my point. Number one, the blockchain ledger does not need to be for money, okay? It could be anything. It could be the details behind your Abyssal module role, right? So, and the blockchain just keeps track of who has what.
An MMORPG where a sword gains power not by some mechanistic enchantment system, but rather by the heroic events it was involved in. Okay, picture this. You start a game using a simple iron sword. You progress and level, and eventually use it to slay a boss named Grillmig the Orc. Suddenly, your simple iron sword becomes Grillmig's Bane, and with the name change, it gains some extra stats. Eventually, like all gear, you'll outgrow it and decide to sell it. Some upcoming player buys it, and as they level, they farm a ton of ghouls. And now it becomes Ghoul Slayer, the Bane of Grillmig. It gains more stats, but eventually this player too outgrows it. The weapon passes from player to player, each time accruing new heroic deeds associated with it, or unlocking achievements that no single player could ever do alone. Eventually.
Okay, so what he just explained is the reason is where this could be valuable, right? Because each item is effectively individual, you can track it being moved around. This does two things. One, it grants the ability for somebody to actually own the thing. Right now, you don't own any of the Abyssal modules that you have. CCP owns them all, right? This is one of the reasons why it's very difficult to do things like, you know, a real money auction house or anything like that, like logistically, is because ultimately you're buying and selling something that's owned by the company, no matter what. So if there was a way to actually convey actual ownership, then you could legitimately buy and sell it, you know, whatever. So in that example, if you switched over to this system, then your Abyssal modules would be tied to, it would be yours, right? And they could potentially be bought and sold on a market or whatever. Now, while the current NFT system is kind of weird because it's like, well, you don't actually own the thing. Well, that's because it's tied to actual things, right? So like, yeah, you don't own the song. You just own the NFT that is about the song. And let's talk a little bit about what the problem with NFTs are. Okay. NFTs are a fucking scam. Straight up. Okay. They're built on air completely. So what you're really purchasing when you get an NFT, when they say, oh, well, you got an NFT of a song, right? Or a piece of art. The what is it? Taco Bell. Taco Bell came up with an NFT in the early days that I remember getting the news of. So the person who got that NFT, they don't have exclusive rights to the picture. You could just go look at the picture. They don't even own the picture. They can't tell anybody to take the picture off the internet. They can't make it exclusive to them or anything. But what there is in one of the cryptocurrency ledgers, basically in the entry for that particular piece of currency, there's a little note on it that says, this piece of currency represents this thing. And since you own that cryptocurrency or that piece of cryptocurrency, you own that thing according to the ledger. So what you're buying is a note in a ledger that says that you own it. That's it. Literally. Like there's nothing stopping somebody, not even a joke. People like to talk about how NFTs are unique. They're not unique because if you let's say somebody makes a cryptocurrency or an NFT using the Ethereum blockchain, you sell it. Well, somebody else could make the NFT in a different blockchain, and oh look, it sells it. Oh look, my blockchain says that this guy owns it. This blockchain says that this guy owns it. Turns out it's all bullshit, right? It's all bullshit. I don't understand it at all. It is speculation on speculation. It is worse than Beanie Babies. But why can't you see it as a blockchain number that you own and attach this number to a funny picture? Because generally speaking, they are leveraging the one of the cryptocurrencies as the mechanism to hold it and run it, right? So that's the problem with NFTs. But this problem is because of the fact that this is a very public thing, right? There's no one that has to respect, and nothing, no systems have to respect the statement that you own this thing at all. Nothing ever has to ever recognize it. And therein lies the problem. However, if the thing is something that is written in a protocol that a game can work with, then now you own a thing within the game in a way. Just like with cryptocurrency, CryptoKitties, if you own a CryptoKitty, you don't actually own the cat. You own the code behind it that the interpreter can turn into a cat. In the same sense, you can own the blockchain could keep track of the details of an abyssal module, for example, and then effectively that functions as the database that informs CCP what modules or what abyssal module it is. This has some pretty interesting implications. First of all, it may help the nature of the fact that like we can't see abyssal modules outside of unless you have it yourself, because they're kind of stored in two different ways and not transmitted cleanly. It would allow people to buy and sell them for realsies. CCP wouldn't CCP control it all? So control it all? I mean, they could theoretically no longer be using that protocol. They are potentially the ones that are establishing the blockchain and the rules of it and respect it in a certain way. And they likely will create a market that allows people to buy and sell it, and that would be where they get their cut from. But I think that the point is precedent to allow people to be able to buy and sell. Well, let's look at the actual letters before we start speculating about that. But as he's pointing out here, though, here's the thing. Yeah, that's right. If it's on a blockchain, then CCP does not control who has what, because the blockchain controls who has what. CCP just controls whether or not and how they interpret and acknowledge that information. Does that make sense? You could theoretically take that exact same data and throw it into a different interpreter to do something else with it, right? Hell, they could theoretically make it so you could buy a CryptoKitty and see what Abyssal module it turns into if they wanted to. They're not going to, and they shouldn't. But that's what I'm saying. Like, the problem that I have with the discussion is that people are limiting their understanding of NFTs and blockchains to the current incredibly scummy implementation of it. And I don't think that that's what these guys are talking about. So let's go and look at what they are talking about. NFTs and other blockchain technologies are making, this is from MMORPG.com. This is CCP's CEO says online gaming content should have practical value in the real world. So CCP Games Hilmar recently signaled that his belief that the idea that NFTs and play-to-earn models can and should be an option for those gamers who want them, stating in an interview with the Korea Economic Daily. So this is worth noting. This is a Korean interview. Now, obviously, CCP is owned now by a Korean company, which is why that makes sense. And so we might need to consider that. Yes, this would theoretically allow you to RMT. But for these things. Speaking to the Korean Economic Daily earlier this month, Hilmar talked about the PvE model, which is the play to earn, which seeing more of a push from companies in game industries lately as NFTs have taken over the discourse. EVE Online is already no stranger to NFTs, as they're awarded to pilots during the recent Alliance tournament back in November. I found that silly. But whatever. The kill mails on the Tezos blockchain. I want to believe that that was just an experiment. Speaking of the outlet, Hilmar talks about games who are looking to earn money from their time investment put in the game, especially talking about the fact that content should be practical value in the real world. Gamers hope that value created from online games can be used in reality. The online gaming content should have practical value in the real world. So this has an interesting implication. This has a tinfoil level implication. We'll talk about that. The gaming industry should evolve to allow gamers to make retirement plans by using the money they earn from games. I think that people heard the wrong thing from this. A lot of people heard from this, I'm going to be able to make a bunch of these things that have no real value and try to hawk them on people, and that's how we're all going to get rich. I think that there might be another option to this. What if game time or game progress could function as a scarcity mechanic? I might have skipped over this earlier, but once you solve the blockchain problem, you actually have the currency issue. In order for something to be a currency, it has to have scarcity. So the entire cryptocurrency system is because there can only be so many Bitcoin or whatever at a time for that Bitcoin to be valuable. If everybody could just make their own, then there's no value to it. If there's zero scarcity, then there's zero value. So what if while you're playing EVE Online, it builds up potential proof of work or potential currency in a different what if CCP introduced their own currency, a real life currency like Bitcoin that can be traded around, but rather than massive amounts of calculation to generate them, the only way to generate them is by playing EVE Online. Would it be attract more bots? Hell yeah. I have no idea how this works. But my point is that there are other ways of looking at this. And it doesn't sound like necessarily that you're generating things to sell. I don't know. Maybe. It could be a matter of the fact that you could sell things that have value within the game, or it could make it so that your time in the game becomes a certain cryptocurrency. I don't know. Hilmar comes up with some wild ideas. So I'm not saying that this is a good idea. I'm just saying that this sounds like the kind of thing that he might riff on. Let's look at the Square Enix letter. Actually, I'm going to go let my cat out of the room real quick and see if he's going to behave at all. He's fine. He's napping. All right. So meanwhile, earlier this week, Square Enix made the news. Square Enix being the makers of Final Fantasy XIV, which just had a very, very successful expansion launch. But then this letter came out and it really bothered a lot of people. Another term that gained quick currency in 2021 was NFT, or non-fungible token. The advent of NFTs using blockchain technology significantly increased the liquidity of digital goods, enabling the trading a variety of such goods at high prices and sparking conversations around the world. I see 2021 not only as a metaverse year one, but also NFT year one, given that it was the year that NFTs were met with a great deal of enthusiasm by rapidly expanding user base. However, we do observe examples here and there of overheating trading in NFT-based digital goods with somewhat speculative overtones, regardless of the observed value of the content provided. This obviously is not an ideal solution, but I expect to see an eventual right-sizing in digital goods deals as they become more commonplace among the general public, with the value of each available content corrected to their true estimated worth, and I look forward to them become as familiar as dealings with physical goods. So what he's saying is that while the current stuff going on is sort of radical and probably overinflated, he expects it to stabilize, normalize, and become a more regular way of transferring ownership of digital goods, just like you would buy physical goods. For instance, with the use of this, maybe you'd be able to own a video game that you buy from Steam rather than just, have a license for it. Or rather, your license is owned on the blockchain. You're going to get in trouble right away, aren't you? We'll see about this. You might see my background. And then there was another statement that got, lastly is blockchain games, be them single player or online games. Games are traditionally involved in unidirectional flow whereby creators such as ourselves provide a game to the customers that play them. By contrast, blockchain games, which has emerged from their infancy and are at this very moment entering a growth phase, are built upon the premise of a token economy and therefore hold the potential for enabling self-sustaining game growth. The driver that most enables such sustaining game growth is diversity, both in how players engage with interactive content like games and their motivations in doing so. This is the controversial statement. Advancing in token economies will likely add further momentum to this trend of diversification. I see the pay to earn. Oh, no, this isn't it. I see the pay to earn concept that has people so excited as a prime example of this. Here we go. I realize that some people who play to have fun and who are currently form the majority of players have voiced their reservations towards these new trends, and understandably so. He's gotten a lot of flack for this, but he's basically saying that there are some people who play the game for fun who are voicing these concerns, which is true. However, I believe that there will be a certain number of people whose motivation is to play to contribute. Again, I think this is terribly worded, and he shouldn't have made this as a contrast, because a person can be playing for fun and hoping to contribute, by which I mean to help make the game more exciting. Traditional gaming has offered no explicit incentive to this latter group of people, who are motivated strictly by such inconsistent personal feelings as goodwill and voluntary spirit. This fact is not... Okay. Sorry. I lost my place completely. Either way, what we have here is another hint, and this is closer to the typical idea, right? So when they're saying contribute, again, poorly chosen word, and he clarifies to say making the game more exciting. So let's go back to that example that was brought up in the blockchain game, right? So in this case, there's a standard longsword, right? And he kills a dude, and that longsword now becomes this item. And then later on, somebody kills a bunch of ghouls, and it becomes a new item.
Now it becomes...
Oh, shh. It becomes this, right? So now that's what it is. And it can be traded around and all that stuff. Now, that means if this is a blockchain system, then that means that the existence of this sword contributes to the overall game itself, right? That there are an increasing number of unique weapons with unique histories that are achieved through player effort and actual experience, right? So not just abyssal modules, but like, what if modules had a history? What if you could create your own officer module? What if doing certain things certain things could evolve over time? So in the same way that introducing abyssal modules created a whole new thing to trade around, and changed the way that the game played in certain ways and the way that the game balanced in certain ways, so too would these contribute to the diversity of the game itself. I think that that's what he means by that word, right? Just based on his clarification. So, no. Again, this isn't a player's power. This is the item's power. And it may not all be a growth thing. Heck, maybe if you burn out your module, it has a chance of permanently having a defect or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, there's all these different ways of putting it. But the point is that by doing things in the game, you are generating these items that might be interesting to people to buy and sell. Therein, you are generating something that through its storage on the blockchain is yours to buy and sell as you want via the systems that allow you to buy and sell that blockchain, units of that blockchain. And the EVE Online client respects that as a specific thing with a specific history. Now, obviously, there's a lot of details about how that could be. Oh, could they cheese it or whatever? That's all design. That's all details. But I'm just saying, like, I feel like this is closer to what they are talking about by the fact that rather than having a game that mostly focuses on, base equipment that can, that is, vendor loot, and then awesome equipment that has gone by raiding and killing a boss, maybe the boss doesn't ever drop any loot anymore. Maybe bosses just don't drop loot. But by killing the boss, it can actually evolve your gear instead. That's potentially interesting. And it's a way of doing it. So I'm not advocating for this. I'm not saying it's a good or bad idea. I'm just saying it's not what people have been arguing about. I don't believe this is about selling fake fucking rights to a picture or song or something. And I don't think this is about using a system that will burn up the planet. It's terrible. It's terrible that the crypto systems that have existed have basically monetized, environmental hazards. But that isn't what it has to be, and it's iterated from then. Everything that you have said can be done with a simple database that we already have, though. Well, except for the fact that you own and control the database. Like, if you want to change an Abyssal module, you can. You can just make my Abyssal module worse. But if I own it on a blockchain, the only thing that you can do is change your interpretation of the data. You can't change the data itself. I understand that you would never do that, but we're talking about the difference of ownership, right? You can also stop using the blockchain. Absolutely. I said that earlier. Just like the CryptoKitties thing. But the point is that it's a ledger with details that is valuable to EVE Online, that the details of it can be bought and sold, and EVE Online respects the data, right? As soon as that becomes invalid or in doubt, then yeah, the currency of these items will collapse. But until then, I think that it could be interesting. I don't know. I just wanted to, like I said, I just wanted to clear up those misconceptions about blockchain and about crypto, or rather, NFTs, because again, it is objectively a cool thing. Like, blockchain is something that we've been talking about in game design worlds for a long while. Also, this would allow like a thing to change over time as trades between different players. I think that a normal database might struggle keeping track of all of those, but maybe not. Hold on. Yeah, here we go. This is the other idea. And this is the idea I'm less favorable on, which is the idea that, like, as you're playing the game, it generates cryptocurrency. I just don't. I just don't know. I just don't know, man. That's the version I hope not, because that basically is the same problem again. Can't chain control. Well, I mean, good luck, Signal. No, just kidding. Yeah. Either way, my point is that blockchain is not inherently bad, and the idea of NFTs is not inherently bad. It's all about how it gets used. The current ways that NFTs are being used and seen in the public eye is a terrible implementation, and I felt the need to clarify things just so that way we can separate the scams from the technology. So hopefully everybody learned a little bit. And no, Signal, I'm not suggesting that that is what CCP is doing. I'm just riffing on what kind of things that I'm interpreting from those statements rather than thinking about, because here's the thing. What is it otherwise? right? Like you can NFT a kill mail like they did, but that's kind of just the same concept of NFTs that we were already working with. And there's no real reason why that kill mail would be valuable to anyone for any reason. And that's, I think, the biggest difference for me. So technology takes a lot of effort to create. And so as blockchain evolved, the biggest question was, how do people monetize it? You know, just like anything else, which is why you see the use of currencies and the attempt to legitimize it as a currency and the idea of NFTs coming into play first and foremost, because that's the obvious way of using that technology to make a lot of money real quick. Kind of like using a bomb for war based on the science that you've used. But then once you've done the science to develop that bomb, you may actually get other technology out of it. Technology that helps people. Technology like this cat going after my camera. And so in that sense, there is a lot of potential in gaming space for NFTs. And gaming space could potentially justify NFTs in a way that the scam version of NFTs are currently struggling to do. I think that that's my point. With that, I'm closing it up. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and comment below, like and subscribe. Thank you very much. Check out my stream live mornings at like 1800 or so. All right. Till next time, I'll see you in space.